Welcome to the Authors Podcast with Lisa Newton. Writing a book is a dream for many people, and in today's society, it has become easier and more important than ever. If you are an expert, speaker, coach, or an authority in your field, having a book is the new business card. It can increase your credibility, enhance your status, and make you the go-to person in your field, opening doors and bringing a flood of opportunities straight to you. You can increase your fees and start choosing the clients you really want to work with. The Authors Podcast show with Lisa Newton is designed to inspire, educate and inform you, both entrepreneur and individual, on how to write a book, as well as writer's tips and strategies on how to actually get that book written. On today's show, you learn more about how to write a book, including writing ideas, marketing, and how to succeed in getting a book written. Here we go with the Authors Podcast, and here is your host, Lisa Newton.
Welcome to another episode of the Authors Podcast. Today I'd like to introduce my guest, who is Vicki Wusche. She is an international author of 5 best-selling books and has also been a finalist in the Business Book Awards 2020. She has contributed to a further 6 published books, and given that she's also a speaker and regular podcast guest, I'm not sure how we're going to cram everything into just 30 or so minutes, but we're gonna have a go. When not writing or speaking, Vicki runs 2 businesses, helping clients to learn how to invest in property or directly finding bespoke investments for them. And if that's not enough, she was named as one of the Telegraphs UK's top 25 most influential people in property. Vicki Wusche started investing in property in 2008. In recent years, she has helped clients invest over £5 million and bought over 70 properties. When not on holiday scuba diving as her alter ego, the Property Mermaid, she loves having time with her growing family, now with 2 grandchildren. Vicki is clearly a thought leader, so I am going to be asking her why and how she has written so many books and how they play a part in her business. So let's crack on. So on the line, I should have Vicki Wusche.
Hello, how are you, Lisa?
I'm not bad. I'm quite excited by this interview because property is close to my heart. So let's dive in. So give us a little bit of your background then. So how did you move from being a university lecturer, because I've found out a little bit about you, to author and property investor?
Well, that was easy. They made me redundant. They got rid of me. So there was no grand plan there. There wasn't sort of like I woke up one morning and went, oh my, I've seen the light. I really must, whatever. I loved the job I was in, and the rotten stink pots, just went, we haven't got enough money, off you go. And depending on when your listeners are listening to this, 2020 will have seen a lot of people in that position. So no choice about the matter. And when I sort of like landed out on the other side, and I knew it was coming because I had a whole team. It wasn't just me. It was like closing down a mini business. So I made 6 of my staff redundant and had to leave myself till the end to be redundant because, I needed to be there to make the rest redundant. So I knew it was coming, but it was still somehow a shock. And so there was this period of what do I do with myself? And actually what happened was I ended up in some personal development. I had a go at being a consultant. I knew I didn't want to have a job. Being a university lecturer and the projects that I've been involved in for the previous 11 years mean that I'm probably not a very good employee. I'd probably be hard to manage and a bit of, too much back chat for any manager who just wants to focus on output. I'd be going, well, why are we doing it like this? Why don't we do it that way? So personal development just gave me that space to think about what was really important to me. And I think that comes up over and over again. 2020 has given me an opportunity to really reflect on what's important to me. And that's what's important to me. What is important to me are the things and the people that are important to me. And that's the driver then. So I knew that the one thing I really enjoyed from my job had been the fact that as a university lecturer, we got huge amounts of time off. You worked very hard when you were on, but when you were off, you were off. And so what I would do is I would use my off time, so as soon as the holidays were, to prep, and I would create workbooks for my students. So I would plan out the whole semester's work, put it all in a workbook. So in some ways I was always writing. You can only see this when you look back. You go, oh, you've always been writing. You were writing when you were a student because you were writing a thesis, and then you were writing when you were a lecturer because you were creating notes. And a friend of mine, Tom Evans, who I must put you in touch with, because if you like authors, man, that man's prolific. I think he's up to about 14 or 15 books. But he ran a book writing course. And what he said was, and I think this is really important for your listeners if they are thinking of writing a book, he said, and I will paraphrase it, just imagine that there are parallel timelines, and in this other timeline your book has already been written. Now, the interesting thing about that is you can't prove that he's wrong, because we can't prove that. We don't have the capability to prove that it's wrong. So what if you just played with the idea that maybe in some other timeline your book had already been written? So that takes away the fear. It's already out there somewhere. We just don't know where it is at the moment because we can't see it. So it's already out there, your book. So all you need to do is read your book in your head and type it out through your fingers to make it appear in this timeline. And that's what I did. I write that. I still write that way. I still believe that somewhere my book is out there, and that takes away all the fear. And then I just type as if I'm taking dictation.
I see, that's really interesting, because one of the books I wrote was about cosmic ordering. And to me, that's about just understanding, we're working in different dimensions. And like you say, I like it. Everything starts with an idea and you manifest that. So it's the belief. So, yeah.
And it ties in with so much other stuff, doesn't it? I mean, we've got a rather sort of cruel fake it till you make it. But also, scientifically, we know that the brain does not know the difference between thinking something is real and something being real.
Yes.
It's like people are scared of spiders and they have decided that that's a real thing. Now, logically, get out the other side of that, and that spider isn't even the size of your fingerprint. How can you possibly be worried that thing, to evoke a flight and fight response, to have you squealing in the corner of the room because something so tiny is there that it's never going to get you? It's because you have allowed that thought into your head. Well, you can also allow positive thoughts into your head.
No, yeah, completely agree. And when you were a university lecturer, did you have a specialism? And have you written any books around that specialism?
Well, I suppose in some ways, yes, because I started off as a business and computing lecturer, and that's what my first degree was in. And then my second degree was in education and knowledge and thought. So what I did was I taught computing to business students, and I taught business to computing students. So I always taught the unwanted to the unwilling. They never
I like that.
they never wanted me. And then I moved into teaching entrepreneurial skills. And then I started working with the creative industries. And so if you look at my books, and I won't bother to list them because they'll be on the page, but they are telling you that the first book is about what I did in property. The second book, which is called Make More Money from Property, is about understanding that property is a business. So I have always looked at property a bit different, I think, to maybe a lot of people, and recognized that it's just the same as if I had chosen to become a coach or a massage person or open a shop or a dog walker or some tech giant. Property is just another form of business. Sometimes when you're in the property world, you think that property is something else. I don't know what it is that you think it is, but you don't talk about property as if it's a business when you're in the property world as much. You talk about it as if it's something different. So yes, I've always write about business. And now I would say there are 3 themes that run through all my books, unless I'm not talking about property, but it's still mentioned there in my history. And that is the mindset. So starting off with the mindset, that it's about having a wealthy mindset. It's about focusing, as I said to you early on, what's important to you, and then the finances of it, so how can you financially support this life that is important to you and make that plan. And then from the finances, do you want to move into business, or do you want to move in specifically into property? Is it business in general or property in specific? So it's just a long line, and everything that I do is around that. It's helping people get that mindset, recognize that they are capable of more than they ever believed. I constantly surprise myself with what I'm capable of, and then maths, and then put it into action.
Excellent. You were listening to the Authors Podcast with Lisa Newton. Please do subscribe to, like and share this channel. So if you're just tuning in, I'm talking to Vicki Wusche. Vicky is an international best-selling author and has written various books, including Using Other People's Money, How to Invest in Property, and various other property books. So Vicky, let's talk about property and how you specifically became a property investor, because I know that there's so many people out there that probably as many people want to write a book, as many people who just somehow or other want to get into property. And it's always those words they use, get into property. So what I thought was interesting is in your biography, you got into it in 2008. Started investing in property. So that was around the time of a lot of turbulence. So talk us through that.
Yeah. I managed to decide to become an active property investor just as the market crashed. And look, surprise, surprise, here we are again. But actually, you know what? As long as you've got the right knowledge and support, it's the best time to start investing. So what you have to be really wary of is that the market is going to go down, and therefore you need to understand the maths. And maths is something I love. And I'm always so sad when I meet people who hate maths or fear maths. Maths is wonderful. It's both creative and scientific for me. It's a brilliant tool. It helps you understand and shape everything in the world. And most importantly, it helps you understand that money is actually a tool and using money is a skill. And once you understand that, if you want to invest in property, then you need to understand how money works, and that means interest, payments, etc. And you need to understand maths, because that'll make it all make more sense for you. Now, I still hate reading the whole profit and loss statements and the accounting side. I mean, that bores me senseless. All I want to know is, I don't want a whole sheet of paper. I don't want a booklet. I just want to know, how much profit did I make? That's all I need to know, because based on that one piece of information, I can decide if I need more information. And that would be about, if the profit wasn't what I expected it to be, I'd want to go back and look at the expenses. And if the profit was more, I'd want to go look at what did I do that I managed to make more profit than I was expecting. So that's it. Again, it's just a tool. But I just started with, I always knew property was a good idea. Sometimes you don't have the language to describe things.
What made you always know it was a good idea? In England, we have that saying, safe as houses.
Yeah, and that's rubbish, isn't it? That's rubbish. You're only as safe as your understanding of finances. Because the trouble with a house, whether you own it or whether you rent it, money's involved. And if you don't understand that, I mean, just a little piece back in my history, which you probably won't know, is that when I first left home at 18, I moved into rented accommodation like a normal person does. And then I met the man that became my husband, and we moved in together as boyfriend and girlfriend into his flat. And he didn't pay the rent, and we got evicted. So I have been evicted as a tenant for not paying the rent. We then went on to buy a property, and he didn't pay the mortgage either. And notice here, this isn't he as in I'm blaming him. I'll explain. He didn't pay the mortgage. We got repossessed. So I have been through that. And the lesson here is, I had allowed the male partner in my life, or the dominant partner in my life, to be in control of the finances. And I didn't know any better. And that's because in my parents' relationship, I thought my dad was in charge of the money. I later found out, actually, that it was probably my mum that was in charge of the money. But I had this impression, this old-fashioned impression, that when you're in a relationship, the man is in charge of the money. Now, through my business, and I work with hundreds of people, actually that's not true. In some families, the woman is in charge, and in some families, the man is in charge. The best families is where they both know about the finances, because if you're both bringing money into the family and you're both spending money out of the family, and you and your children all need to understand it. And that's what I've been doing a lot through the early part of 2020, is speaking to people about finances and getting more clued up on it. And so going back to the property question, I don't know how I knew it was a good idea until I started investing. Before that, I had been aware of it. I was aware of my grandparents' house, living on a large plot of land. And when my grandparents died, one of the things we were looking at was how we could build on the land. But we never followed it through because my father was more interested in other things. Property wasn't his passion or his interest. And then through moving, through rental properties, through being evicted and repossessed and all of those sorts of things, I started to learn words and language for a thing that I didn't know existed. Now, if I was renting a property back when I was, 18, 19, 20, and that's quite a while ago, won't tell you how long, then people must have been buy-to-let investors back in those days. But we didn't have that language, buy-to-let investors. We didn't have buy-to-let mortgages. All of that came around just somewhere slightly post 2000 or around the 2000 mark. So it was new. And it wasn't in 2008 that there were loads of courses around. Whereas now property investment is part of our language. It's part of the government's agenda. You know, the government is passing laws about taxes to do with property investing and the behavior of landlords, and councils are interested in this, and councils are putting in laws saying, oh no, there are too many shared houses in this area and that sort of stuff. So it's part of our national psyche now, that I don't think, if you're listening to this now, that you can understand that just 20 years ago it absolutely wasn't like that.
What do you think changed then? What changed?
People finally worked out that ordinary people could invest in property. I think probably 20 years ago, there were what we now refer to as accidental landlords. So 20 years ago, grandma died, left you her house, you didn't know what to do with it. So you rented it out to a friend who hadn't got a place, and they gave you some money, and there wasn't probably proper legal contracts between things, etc. And then everything has got on the agenda of clever people. So, you know, the legal departments realize that we need to have contracts and there's money to be made here. There are now high street letting agents that can provide management services. So a whole industry built up around something that was previously informal. And if we go all the way back to old days, back in the times of Henry VIII, where there were kings and there were serfs and servants and everything else, practically everybody in the country, unless you were a lord and you owned a giant plot of land that was given to you by the king, you were a tenant. You know, we had tenant farmers and all this sort of stuff. You were a tenant. And so it's always been there, but not the modern way that we do it, because now we're tenants, but we're not a tenant of a lord that is farming the land. Isn't it interesting? Landlord. In the old days, we were tenant farmers of land. And the condition of us living in this property was that we worked this land. We either worked for the Lord, or we worked the land, or along with our little house came a plot of land that we worked, which then we sold our corn that made that we could pay the Lord of the land our money back. And now we're just ordinary people on high streets and in villages. This is what people do, and it's nothing related to sort of farming, because we've built houses on everywhere. So it's a fascinating history and a fascinating industry to be in, and looking at how it's evolved. But really, it's just the same. We've just put this structure around it, made it modern, made it up to date. I was aware of the fact that this was a good idea. I literally got an email inviting me to do in those days, a free 2-hour event. Went along to one of them. You're laughing. You've probably been to one of those as well.
I'm a seminar junkie. Been to
so I was a hardcore sold on this. So we went from the 2-hour free into the 3-day, just under £1,000. And from that, wham, we spent £40,000 between us. So what happened was, I went to the free event with Bob, my partner, brought along my sister and brother-in-law to the 3-day event. And then from the 3-day event, all of us signed up for this ridiculously expensive. And when I say ridiculously expensive, because the content wasn't there, the support wasn't there. It was just days of training, and this 3-day training pattern meant that day one was always the same. It was bringing everybody up to speed. Well, by the time you've done one course, you don't need to be brought up to speed on the second course, but you always were. And then the afternoon was always about sales. So you had about, if you were lucky, 1.5 days content in a 3-day weekend event. So it wasn't good value for money. That's why I say it was ridiculously expensive. It was overpriced, but they're still out there. They're still following that model. So it obviously works for them. It's just whether it works for the investors. So that's a whole, probably another podcast on critiquing property investment training, but we won't go there. So we did that. We took the training course, and literally off that first 3-day taster session, I'd already got 2 inches of notes, and I was out there looking for property. By the time we did our first bit of proper training, I'd already accidentally got 2 offers accepted. And I'm going accidentally because I was only practicing. I was told you need to put 100 offers out there before you start getting yeses. And someone said yes to offer 25 and 26. And I was thinking, no, I'm only practicing. You can't say yes yet. I haven't done the next part of the course. I don't know what to do. So yeah, no, it was good fun, exciting days. Now I can look back, having come through one recession, and we're probably on the brink of another, going, my goodness, how did I survive? How did I make it through? How am I still going 10 years later? Some of it is a degree of luck, but I also think it's about determination and, more importantly, picking the right strategy right at the very beginning.
You were listening to the Authors Podcast with me, your host, Lisa Newton. You can email me, lisa@lisanewton.co.uk. And remember, we have the Inner Circle, which is for writers just like you, and you can join us at writerbook.net. So if you're just tuning in, I'm talking to Vicki Wusche, also known as the Property Mermaid, and she has written various books on property, including Make More Money from Property, from investor thinking to a business mindset, and Property for the Next Generation, Securing Your Future in Uncertain Times. So we really are in uncertain times. The one question people always ask, and I will ask, is now a good time to buy property in 2020?
It's always a good time to buy property, because whatever situation you're in, whether you're buying it as a residential home, if you can afford it, then it's the right time to buy it. And if you've already got your residential home and you've got surplus cash, then investing in property will give you a better return. I've just done a deal for a client where he's going to be getting somewhere in the region of 12 to 15%. I say in the region of because we haven't finished the deal yet, but it'll be, say, 12% return in the first year, and then once he's paid back some of his investment, he'll be getting 15% net return. You can't get that in a building society.
No,
you can't get that in a building society. It's going to cost him £35,000 in terms of fees and deposit on this property. And because it is a more complex property, because he's a more experienced investor, he's going to be getting £1,050 return. Now, that's not normal for everybody. A lot of properties will only get you £500 to £600 return for that level of investment. But he's got a great deal because, he's an old friend. I know he's experienced enough. And so I've got him a more advanced property because I know that he can manage it and make the right decisions, because that's it. That's the crux. It's always the right time to invest in property, but whether you have the skill to pick the right property and whether you have the skill and the determination to manage it so that it keeps generating money for you, that's important. I mean, I've spoken again to, because this is what I do, I have a lot of strategy sessions with people where they're struggling either because they want to get started or because they've got portfolios, and speaking to some people where they have got themselves into, and I'm going to use the word, a greedy space. They've gone too big too fast, they've borrowed too much money, they've put different strategies together where they've made them complex loans without, or complex financial agreements without any asset backing it. And I'm not going to get into all the details because it's not really a property conversation, it's as much a book conversation. But if you just stay sure and steady until you've got yourself a solid foundation and a decent income coming in, so that you know that you can cover all of your expenses, and then you know that you don't have to work but you still do. Once you've then got that experience behind you, then you make calculated risks. And I think what's happened to quite a few people over, let's say, the last 4 years, so sort of 2016 up to 2020, we were starting to come out of the recession. We weren't in fifth gear yet, but we were starting to pick up pace. Obviously, there was the challenges of Brexit. God, can you remember Brexit? I mean, like that
The
just
UK
feels
listeners.
like nonsense, doesn't it? In the background, shall we be part of Europe or not? And now we're thinking, oh, will we live or not? But so we had all of that going on, but we were coming out of all of that. And so, people were starting to feel, certainly investors, maybe the general public weren't feeling confident, but investors were starting to feel like there was movement and they could see the end of all of this Brexit uncertainty, and they were lining themselves up for all these deals. And I do feel a lot of people overstretch themselves. And again, that brings me back to the beginning of the conversation. You need to understand the maths.
No, I completely agree. And as someone with an accounting background, I've always said that maths is probably the most important subject at school, but yet the one everyone is quite comfortable saying and admitting, I'm no good at it and I don't like it and things. And I always say, we actually, years ago, we made a little game for kids called Maths Making Money Fun, because to me, money is numbers and it's got to be fun, and you've just got to enjoy it, and you can't shy away from it, and you just got to like it. Why not? There's nothing wrong with that. But I personally think that it's a bad experience people have probably had learning maths at school.
Yes.
To me, maths is one of those things, it's like a building block. You've got to understand A before you can move on to B.
Totally.
And if you're on a level E and you still can't understand C, then as we go through the alphabet, it just makes no sense.
No, of course.
This is why I think a lot of people struggle, and it can be very off-putting, because with my background in bookkeeping, I've seen grown adults and they just don't want to open their bank statements. They just leave it. Bookkeeper will look after that. And I always think, well, no, you've got to at least open your bank statements, have a look, see what's in there. But some people just have this kind of really hands-off approach.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And I do feel that they use maths as an excuse to ignore finances. I'm no good at maths, therefore I won't be any good at finances. That's not good enough. You can't afford to be like that. And, 2020 has shown us that. And I mean, just to talk about how bad maths is, we have in the family, I think she might be 9 or 10-year-old niece. And on the family WhatsApp group, they've been sharing some of her homework when they get stuck. Now, I'm good at maths and flipping heck. I mean, really, a question like, so Fred has got an amount of money and Jane has got an amount of money, and Fred's got 3 times what she had. But when you add it together, the answer is, like, whoever needs to do that? You need adding up, you need taking away, you need to understand multiplication, because that is interest. And why in maths aren't we taught about interest? Why aren't maths lessons related to the real world? I mean, do you still remember, I have to say I quite like them, 2R plus 3Z equal 2C's or something, but you never need to do that when you go down the shops. What you need to do is, when the shops say to you, buy 3 get 1 free, you need to be able to look at whether that's actually worth the money, not to mention whether you need 3 times the product that you went in to buy one of, but is it good value to do that? And reading the small print, when you get down to the units, when it says, oh, it's 32p per 100, be able to understand that if you read that this bottle of ketchup, let's say this bottle of ketchup is 32p per 100, and this bottle that's on special offer is actually 34p per 100, even at the reduced price, well, you're better off buying the other bottle or 2 of the other bottle at a smaller price. That's what we need to understand. And therefore, do not get into property investing if you don't understand or manage your own finances. I mean, I speak to lots of people, either who want me to mentor them into property or want me to just get on and do it and find the property investments for them. And one of the key things I make them do before we start having a conversation about their strategy is fill in this sheet and show me how you manage your money. And we probably spend a good hour talking about how they're not really on top of their expenses. They had a big surprise. Oh, they spend more than they thought. And that's the first thing that I make everybody do, because if I can't make you look at your own finances and manage your own personal budget, when all you've got to do is have wages in and all your direct debits go out, how are you then going to be able to manage a property business, which as soon as you get your first rental, you have a property business and you have multiple, you know, not necessarily multiple streams of income, because you'll have maybe just one property with one rental coming in, but different expenses that you have to pay for. If you're not managing what you're doing at home, how can I then give you another set of maths and another set of accounts to manage and expect this property to be a great return on your money? And I don't think a lot of other property mentors or even property sourcing agents will do that with clients. But because of my background, because of my marriage breakup, being homeless, being on benefits, having experienced, you know, repossession, eviction, all that sort of stuff, I understand how important it is.
You were listening to the Authors Podcast with Lisa Newton. Please do subscribe to, like and share this channel. So let me ask you where the name Property Mermaid came from.
That's an easy one. A friend of mine, Thomas Power, he and his wife Penny had created something called E-Academy back in 2007. It was a business environment for business owners before, if you can imagine, 2007, before the invention of Facebook and LinkedIn. It was a combo Facebook, LinkedIn space.
They were the pioneers, definitely.
And I was part of that. And I had a conversation with Thomas and he asked me about me, and he just turned around and went, "Oh, you're a property mermaid," because that's sort of starting to do in 2007, starting to look at investing in property. I was still only in the training phases. In fact, I think we probably had the conversation in 2008, not 2007, but just starting out on my property journey and passionate about scuba diving. Love scuba diving, just so happy under the water with the fishes and all the little things and doing my underwater photography, that it was that. And I think what he used to do was he used to meet people and take a bit about their personal life and a bit about their work life and put the two things together. So you might be the property accountant or the property calculator. You know, he might make a joke out of that for you, mixing your property or... He was just very good at that. And then I created that as the website address for my blog and carried on from there. And yeah, it was just a fun name. And I think the thing is, with a name like Vicki Wusche, you would have thought Vicky would be easy and the Wusche would be the difficult bit, but people can't spell Vicky and people can't pronounce Wusche. And so having the Property Mermaid and the blonde hair just meant that people would go, "Oh, it's you. I know who you are. You're the Property Mermaid." And people would often come up and talk to me and go, "Oh, you're the Property Mermaid." So it stuck. It stuck. And I think it's really only in the last couple of years I've not used it as obviously.
Yeah. And tell us how we can get in touch with you and how to actually spell your name, because that's actually very important. I think you're very inspirational. So if people out there are looking for a property mentor, tell us about the services you offer.
Okay. So services first and then moving forward from that. So pretty much no matter what you're interested in, whether it's working out your mindset and getting to grips with money and looking at how you can take back control of your own life, whether it's setting up a business or improving your business, or whether it's specifically going into property, one of the things that I have is some online audits. So they are free for people. The property one is coming out in a couple of weeks, but the rest are up on the website. And if you go to, and I will spell this afterwards, but vickiwusche.com/scorecard, you can take one of the free assessments. And what it'll do is send you a personalized report and tell you what you need to be focusing on in order that you can have the life that you want. And then following on from under that is, if you find that in the report it says do this and this and this, and you go, "Oh, I know how to do that," and off you go and you do it, great, then I have helped you and I am delighted, and you will then go on and help others. And if you don't know how to do it for yourself, then you can get in touch. You can book a quick 20-minute call complimentary to see if I can answer a quick question and move you on. Or if that doesn't work, then you can choose to have a proper strategy session with me. And then what happens is that people read my books, watch my videos, take online courses, take the online assessment, get involved, be part of my database, etc. And at some point when it's ready for them, then they get in touch and they say, actually, Vicky, I've had a go on my own. I need you to be my business mentor. I need you to be my property mentor. I need you to, if you like, be my life mentor. I know that I want to live this sort of life and I just need to tidy things up so that I can live my vision. And other people say, I know I want to invest in property and I've got the money, but I don't have the time. I'm busy running my own business or busy being a senior management in some other company. I want to employ you to go and find me investment deals. And then that's what I can do with them. So it's mentoring, training, or sourcing property, or you can just read the books. They're all on Amazon, and especially the latest book, The Wealthy Retirement Plan, A Revolutionary Guide to Living the Rest of Your Life in Style, which I suppose now is really the funnel of the book to come in. The starter book, I think. If you read that one first, then that's the one that is about what do you want your life to be like and how can you make your life be what you want it to be. And then when you come out the other end of that book, you'll either go, I'm happy being an employee, but I'm going to do this with my savings and my life. I want to improve my business or start a business, and you'll do this. Or you will say, actually, I've got spare money that isn't making enough money in the bank. I want to invest in property and I'll do this. And then you've got the scorecards that will then tell you what's the next step that you need to be playing with. So as I said, I'd spell my name for you. So it's Vicki, and my last name is spelt Wusche. And if you can spell that, you'll find me on all social media sites: Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. I have phases of, whether the weather's good or the weather's not so good, how prolific I am on social media and which channel I'm focused on at the time. And you'll be able to find the website address. You'll be able to find the books on Amazon. Yeah, everything if you can spell my name.
Okay, VickiWusche.com. And I always like to ask people this question because I think it's really, really good. When you've got several books out there, have those books, because they're on property, played a part in your business?
Oh, very much so. Very much so. I mean, when I wrote the very first book in 2010, it was very much home done, on my own. Got a friend to proofread. I got a friend to help me get it up to Amazon again, because 10 years ago in book writing terms was back in the dark ages. Now you've got software to help you structure your books, and you've got Amazon and Kindle Plus and all of that. And we didn't have that then. So I wrote that book, and I actually wrote it both as a project for me to understand outsourcing, because then I had to manage somebody to design and create the cover for me, but also as a way to say to people, stop making assumptions about me. You don't know me. You keep saying to me, oh, it's all right for you, because you don't know me at all. You don't know my story. So I wrote it very much, the very first version, which I think is like several £1,000s on American Amazon, which is quite hysterical, really. Probably somebody's just got the one book. But it was very much about, this is how I took my family pot of £80,000 and went, let's go buy property. And this is the strategies that we used and where they worked and where they didn't work. And then now it's in its 4th edition. And each time I've completely rewritten it. Now it's about, these are the strategies that I used. And from, a strategic perspective, this is the pros and the cons of these strategies, depending on whether you have time or money. That got me speaking gigs. And from the speaking gigs, that gets you business, even if you don't sell from the stage. And then I started to recognize that the books were like salespeople. Yeah. And where we're at now, even when you're in the late 20 teens, now we're in the 2020s, so many people have a question and they want it answered. They go to Google and they search. Actually, what a lot of people do, I think a lot of people also go to Amazon and ask the question. Yeah. Because if the answer to their question is a product or a service or potentially a book or information, they may go straight to Amazon first. If it's a generalized question about, there's this tree and it's green and it's got a pink flower, then they might ask that off of Google, a general knowledge style question. But if they're starting to go to Amazon, then you need to have product on Amazon that people can find that answers their questions. So getting good book titles, good secondary titles to the book, good cover images, The back page is so important. The introduction, having a look inside on the book is so important. Having it available both as a paperback and as a Kindle, because so many people read Kindles. I can't even tell you the percentage, the ratio of Kindles to books. It's probably 50 Kindles to a book, as an example of, the balance of what people buy, because people just put them on their devices and then it's so much easier. They can read off their phones or they can read off of their iPads, etc. But then the other thing that you need to think about is not only are these little salespeople out there, but if there's salespeople out there, they need to have, I suppose in pure sales terms, we'd call it a script, but actually what we're saying is a message. And so if you're going to be the answer to someone's question, your book is going to be the answer to someone's question. First, you have to understand the question in order to answer it. But then what you've got to do is take them on this journey of, here is the answer to your question. Now you have the information. You can go away and do it yourself. But if you need help, then this is how I am here for you. Now, obviously, this is slightly different. If you're going to write stories, then that's a different kettle of fish. But I'm talking about sort of practical books. What is the next step that you want your reader to do? What do you want them to do next? And saying, phone me won't work, because you'll either get swamped or you'll be sitting there listening to a phone that never rings. You need to give them a next step. And it could be, go to my website and download these free resources, which are the tools that will help you do part one. Here's the spreadsheet, or, here's further reading, or follow my podcast, or follow my YouTube channel, or take my online audit. Or even simply, when you've written more books, here are then more books for you to read. So
excellent. So that's some really good tips. Thank you very much, Vicky. I could talk for a lot longer. I really, really could. I think that's quite fascinating. So
maybe we need to do a podcast on each of the 5 books. We'll do 5 podcasts on each book, and the lessons for authors and the lessons for property people. So we could do another 10 podcasts if you want, Lisa.
I'll definitely have you back. I will definitely. So thank you very much. So Vicky, just once again, your website is www.vickiwusche.com, and Vicky is spelled Vicki. Wusche is Wusche. Wusche, sorry.
That's fine.
Wusche. And you can find Vicky on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Vicki Wusche. I think it's probably safe to say there's probably only one of you.
Yes. Yes, there is only one of me.
So that's brilliant. So thank you very much for being a guest on the Authors Podcast, Vicky. You've been very generous with your time and with your knowledge, and that's really much appreciated.
Totally my pleasure. Thank you for having me, Lisa.
Thank you. So listeners, I hope that's inspired you. I know a lot of you are interested in property, and I'm quite excited just listening to Vicky. So do check out her website and take the scorecard, which is on her website, vickiwusche.com. So that concludes another episode of the Authors Podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.
You have been listening to the Authors Podcast with Lisa Newton, sponsored by Boogles Limited. Tweet the show at Boogles_books, spelled BOOGLEZ_books. You can also contact your host via the email address lisa@lisanewton.co.uk. And if you want to join our authors community, join the inner circle at www.writeabook.net. You have just been listening to the Authors Podcast with Lisa Newton. See you next time.